Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm the Captain, and today I'm going to be reviewing another Pathfinder product. So this one is the Pathfinder Fist of the Ruby Phoenix Pawn Collection. So this is another collection of pawns for use in the Pathfinder role-playing game that are specifically designed to be used with the Adventure Path Fists of the Ruby Phoenix. Bit of a mouthful. So, before we get too into this, I do want to say I've got a ton of links in the description down below that you can check out at your leisure. There's a link for BoardGameCaptain.com, as well as a link for my Patreon if you're in a position who would like to support the channel, and a link to my Teespring store where you can get yourself some cool Board Game Captain merch, some cool gamer gear. All right, so first things first, I want to give a big thank you to Paizo for sending me this copy of Fists of the Ruby Phoenix Pawn Collection to check out using my games of Pathfinder and review. Now, so, of course, if you are playing Fists of the Ruby Phoenix, if you're playing that adventure path, then you're going to want to get these. Because you get these plus the basic pawn set for the first bestiary, and that's usually generally what you need to play. But after reading over the description to you, I'm going to want to go into specifically who else might want to get this? What are the reasons would you want to pick this up? All right, so let's read the description on the back. Step into the arena and pit your players against ruthless rivals from the Fists of the Ruby Phoenix Adventure Path. The Pathfinder Fists of the Ruby Phoenix Pawn Collection features more than 170 creature pawns for use with the Pathfinder role-playing game or any tabletop fantasy RPG. Printed on sturdy cardstock, each pawn represents a beautiful full-color image of a monster or NPC from the Fists of the Ruby Phoenix campaign, including malevolent martial artists, charming challengers, and brutal beasts to encounter and defeat in the grand arena. The Fists of the Ruby Phoenix Pawn Collection, together with the creatures from the Pathfinder Bestiary Pawns Collection, provide pawns for nearly all Fists of the Ruby Phoenix encounters. Each cardstock pawn slots into a size-appropriate plastic base from the Pathfinder Bestiary Pawn Box or Pathfinder Pawns base assortment, making the pawns easy to mix with traditional plastic or metal miniatures. With tons of distinct images, the Fists of the Ruby Phoenix Pawn Collection brings to life the enemies and allies from all three adventures of Fists of the Ruby Phoenix Adventure Path. All right, so I've had a look at all of these and I've pulled them out. Now, as usual, as you can expect, they're filled with tons of really awesome artwork, lots of really cool characters. Again, if you are playing Fists of the Ruby Phoenix, you're gonna want these. If you're running a Fists of the Ruby Phoenix game, you're going to want these so that you can have them for your players. So my typical downside with these pawn collections for specific adventure path does hold true. That one, they don't come with the plastic bases, which is why you're going to need either to buy some plastic bases or, of course, get the basic pawn set for the Pathfinder Bestiary, because you will need the creatures from the Bestiary along with this to cover most of the monsters in the adventure path as well. It did specifically note that it covers almost all of the monsters. I have to take a little away from it that it doesn't actually cover everything that you're able to run into. But generally, these are pretty good. And again, this is like over 170 standees in here. So there's a lot of stuff. So again, if you're playing that adventure path, you're going to want this. Now, under what other circumstances would you want this? I think this actually has an above average amount of opportunity for use in role-playing games other than just playing the particular adventure path for Pathfinder than the normal pack of pawns would have. And the reason is this specifically is getting into a lot of stuff with kind of like a Far Eastern Asian flavoring, a Far Eastern feel to them. You've got a lot of standees for just general warriors and archers and such, but with a more Asian feel and theme to them. And I think that is really awesome. So if you're just looking to play a game that has that takes place in the far east of Galarian or another fantasy world with another game system that has a Eastern feel, that is really, really cool. In addition, we've got tons of standees in here that are great for representing player characters of a lot of the newer ancestries that have been coming out, things like Kitsune or Tengu, or various others that show up in here, as well as older ancestries, again with a more Far Eastern feel. In addition, there's lots of unique and interesting looking standees, like this crazy monster cat thing. Now, obviously, this is something that is a specific monster from this adventure path, but you could use shape-shifting demons that want to pretend to be a cat. You could use the standee for them. And this thing looks awesome. There's also a lot of great large and gigantic standees for big monsters, many of which, even though they might be specific creatures from this adventure path, some of them are just creatures that have been showing up in the second and third bestiaries, and some are creatures that, even though they might be from this specific adventure path, could easily be stand-ins for other forms of gigantic demons or monsters or giants, etc. And there's a ton of really cool stuff. I want to show a few of these here because some of these are just really, really awesome. Yeah, and again, player characters. Lots of great stuff that could be used as PCs from here. So now, with these, I generally have to take away points because I feel like that there's a limited utilage for these, because if you're not playing the particular adventure path, there's a lot of these you're not going to use. But this one just has a ton of regular monsters that you're going to want more of, in addition to having just a lot of re-themed of the common ancestries like elves and humans and orcs done in a Far Eastern feel, and that could be used as player characters or NPCs, not necessarily enemies, as well as some really cool and different looking standees for the enemies. This is actually a really good set to get. So yeah, I kind of like this one. I think it's really cool. I would recommend it to you, of course, if you're playing the particular adventure path. If you're playing a role-playing game that uses miniatures or standees, and you're playing in a part of the world that is obviously based on Asian folklore and mythology, Far Eastern folklore and mythology, this would be fantastic to get, especially because, like I said, there's a ton in here that are very useful for playing as actually using as your player characters in that part of the world. So I'm going to give the Ruby Phoenix Fists of the Ruby Phoenix Pawn Collection 7.5 stars out of 10. I think this is really cool. It is only $20. It's going for $19.99 retail, which is not bad for the number of standees you get in here. And there is a fair amount of uses you're going to get out of it. So I've been showing up on screen a lot of my favorite images of my favorite standees, but there's a ton in here. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Would you be interested in getting these standees? Are you going to be running any kind of game with a Far Eastern flair that you might be interested in checking these out? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this review of a role-playing game product and you'd like to see me do more like it, be sure to give this video a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.